So, Professor Kim, I was wondering if you could share with the Center for Korean Studies community some of your reflections on the importance of the work of the Truth and Reconciliation for both Korean society and East Asian regional politics.
The mission of Truth Commission in Korea is to verify the hidden history of modern Korea and resolving the grievances of the victims throughout the burdened past. And by this investigation and truth-finding process, I think we can achieve a kind of social integration in Korean society, because Korean society has been divided by regional conflict and ideological conflict, and so many social conflict between rulers and ruled. So we can achieve this objective by truth-finding process and resolving the grievances of the victims. And in terms of East Asian context, Korea's experiment would be the first case especially in North East Asian context. In accomplishing our mission, we can also achieve a kinds of regional integration and to make human rights sensitive countries and resolving the national conflict between China and Japan and between Korea and Japan. So if we make Korean society to be more human rights sensitive country, our achievement can affect other countries neighboring Japan and China. So we can enhance the peacefulness among these countries in East Asia.
Professor Kim, when you were standing commissioner on the TRCK, the specific commission you were in charge of was the one that dealt with massacres, civilian massacres during the Korean War. Could you talk a little bit about what you think the significance of your commission's findings are for current Korean society and what you hope it will do?
Since the end of the Korean War, in Korean society, in Korean politics, only one-sided narratives of the Korean War has been dominated. I mean, the Cold War understanding of the Korean War. For example, North Korea invaded South Korea, and South Korea defended itself by the help of United States and United Nations. But under these one-sided narratives, the hidden aspect of the Korean War, especially the human cost of the Korean War, especially massacres committed by South Korean military police and U.S. Army, have not been uncovered until now. So by investigating the kinds of hidden stories of the Korean War, we can make the narratives of the Korean War more workable and more plentiful in understanding the Korean War. Then, I mean, the the one-sided narratives of the Korean War are used as a political means to the extreme rightists or conservatives to dominate Korean society. And if we build kinds of counter narratives of the Korean War by investigating the hidden stories of the Korean War, we can get a knowledge or understanding of the East Asian politics a little differently. So we can pursue the reunification of Korea, and eventually we can get at the future peaceful relations with other countries in East Asian context. So this is very important for the future of Korean politics and East Asian politics when we re-understand or re-explain the cause and the very existence and very facts of the Korean War.
Since you are here at University of Michigan and speaking as the former standing commissioner here in the United States right now, is there a particular case that your commission had to investigate that you would like to talk about to an American audience or a Korean studies audience here in the U.S. that you might think is significant?
It's my great pleasure to be here at University of Michigan when I spend my sabbatical for a year. So it's quite familiar place for me. So it's very important for me to speak about the history of the Korean War and the Truth Commission's work to the Korean Americans and American audiences, what the Korean War was really like, and what the Truth Commission's work achieved, because the relations between South Korea and United States is very particularly important, not just for Koreans but Americans, because we have been a very keen relationship between United and South Korea. Then somebody criticized the work of our commission may kinds of negative impact on the current keen relationship between United States and South Korea. But if we make the relationship between two countries more friendly and more equal than before, we must talk about the dark history of the Korean War, where U.S. intervened. Maybe I think for the first time in the third world countries, U.S. Involved in the civil war of the third world countries for the first time. So we can raise the linkage of the U.S. involvement of the third world countries' civil war from the Korean War up to current Afghanistan's war. So we must understand the background and the meaning and the result of the war that the United States intervened into. So my speech at the United States, and especially the University of Michigan, is very important for sharing our experience as a Korean and the experience of Korean Americans and Americans. We can find some differences in understanding the modern Korean history, but we can understand each other by raising the different viewpoints and some compensation with each other in terms of their viewpoints about the United States stance to Korea and Korea's stance to United States. So this is a very important opportunity for me when I studied or when I stayed a year in this United States and United States of Michigan, and I studied more deeply into the history of the United States and its involvement in the Korean War and other war.
Professor Kim, I was wondering if you could talk maybe just a bit about reflecting on yesterday's conversation.
Yeah. Okay, I missed that point. I was greatly surprised to see so many people came to yesterday's meeting. Among them, so many Korean Americans and graduate students and elderly Americans, and it was a great surprising meeting for me to get some response and questions from them, and I was surprised to see their sincere and very deep concern about my speech, so we can share kinds of community we live in. We can share some sympathy about the necessity of making peace in reflecting the dark history of the Korean War. And some commentator asked and said to me and to the audiences, we are all in one humankind. We are all in a community, and it was quite impressive for me to hear his remarks. So we must share based on Korea's experience to the overcoming these war-ridden society and world. So it was very important and I think very amusing and impressive meeting for me. I think I can remember in the future.
Is there anything else that you would like to mention or talk about for the University of Michigan?
I wish more Americans and more Korean Americans will study not just the Korean War, but the United States involvement into the war overseas, because Americans or Korean Americans can understand American society more deeply when they study this kind of war that occurred overseas.